Nearly 3 years have passed since the public voted to leave the European Union. It was the biggest democratic exercise in our country's history. I came to office on a promise to deliver on that verdict. In March 2017, I triggered the Article 50 process for the UK to exit the EU, and Parliament supported it overwhelmingly. 2 years on, MPs have been unable to agree on a way to implement the UK's withdrawal. As a result, we will now not leave on time with a deal on the 29th of March. This delay is a matter of great personal regret for me. And of this I am absolutely sure. You, the public, have had enough. You're tired of the infighting. You're tired of the political games and the arcane procedural rows. Tired of MPs talking about nothing else but Brexit when you have real concerns about our children's schools, our National Health Service, knife crime. You want this stage of the Brexit process to be over and done with. I agree. I am on your side. It is now time for MPs to decide. So today I have written to Donald Tusk, the President of the European Council, to request a short extension of Article 50 up to the 30th of June to give MPs the time to make a final choice. Do they want to leave the EU with a deal which delivers on the result of the referendum, that takes back control of our money, borders and laws while protecting jobs and our national security? Do they want to leave without a deal? Or do they not want to leave at all, causing potentially irreparable damage to public trust, not just in this generation of politicians, but to our entire democratic process? It is high time we made a decision. So far, Parliament has done everything possible to avoid making a choice. Motion after motion and amendment after amendment has been tabled without Parliament ever deciding what it wants. All MPs have been willing to say is what they do not want. I passionately hope MPs will find a way to back the deal I've negotiated with the EU. A deal that delivers on the result of the referendum and is the very best deal negotiable. And I will continue to work night and day to secure the support of my colleagues, the DUP and others for this deal. But I am not prepared to delay Brexit any further than the 30th of June. Some argue that I'm making the wrong choice, and I should ask for a longer extension to the end of the year or beyond, to give more time for politicians to argue over the way forward. That would mean asking you to vote in European elections nearly 3 years after our country decided to leave. What kind of message would that send? And just how bitter and divisive would that election campaign be at a time when the country desperately needs bringing back together? Some have suggested holding a second referendum. I don't believe that's what you want, and it is not what I want. We asked you the question already, and you gave us your answer. Now, you want us to get on with it. And that is what I am determined to do.
And there, the Prime Minister making a very brief statement in Downing Street, and I'll sum it up for you. Brexit means Brexit won't happen on March the 29th, but June the 30th at the very latest, says Theresa May. Let's get analysis with our political editor, Faisal Islam, listening in outside Downing Street. Well, some very, very familiar themes there, Faisal, but this direct appeal to the people of the United Kingdom, more or less saying its MPs have been messing this all around.
Yes, very short, but with a singular message. It's MP's fault that Brexit's not happening next Friday, and I've had to delay, much to my regret, the Brexit date till June the 30th. That was the central message that the PM wanted to get out there to the public that perhaps don't watch the news channels every day and every twist and turn of this debate, and are wondering why she hasn't been able to keep her firm promise that we would be leaving on the March the 29th, something that she put into law, but also saying that MPs have a final chance. They've ducked making the fundamental choice between a deal or no deal. She ruled out again what she said at the PMQ. She ruled out participation in the European parliamentary elections, which also means we can't have a longer extension. She was quite sort of derisory about the idea of a longer extension, even lasting a year, she said. There's many in her cabinet, some in her cabinet, actually, several people in her cabinet do want an extension of that type. And if, this is the crucial questions, if MPs reject what is a familiar pitch from the Prime Minister again next week, if they do indeed get a chance to vote on it from the Speaker, if they do reject it, what happens then? The Prime Minister saying that European parliamentary elections are not an option, which means that a longer extension is not an option, which means what exactly happens then? Prime Minister doubling down on the same strategy. In a way, the date has changed, but in terms of the strategy, nothing has changed.
Okay, Faisal, thank you very much indeed, our political editor there with his instant analysis in Downing Street. I'm going to get more of that now with Sonia Sodha, former Labour advisor and chief leader writer at The Observer, and by Giles Kenningham, who was David Cameron's former press chief in Downing Street. Very good evening to you both. I want to start with you then, Giles, because you've experience of those kind of statements, not necessarily, certainly not in these circumstances. What did you think then of Theresa May's strategy, appealing over the head of MPs, including, dozens, hundreds of her own who voted against this deal, to the people of the United Kingdom?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, it is the last throw of the dice. She's trying to mobilise public sentiment and create that wedge, and it was a change in tone, pretty aggressive in the delivery. She didn't look very happy. Short statement, obviously, the media optics around this, trying to get onto the 10 o'clock news. So yeah, we'll have to see.
And live on Sky News.
And live on Sky, of course. But yeah, I think they've tried this before in terms of mobilising public sentiment, and it hasn't worked. Having said that, you do speak to MPs and they say on the doorstep, a lot of people are saying, well, hasn't it been done yet? Well, what's going on? So she, trying to drive that wedge there. Interesting tactic. Certainly, I think for the Tory party, they've got to look at this and say, look, are we going to completely tear ourselves apart? Because at some point they're going to have to come back together, and if they don't, it will be handing the keys to Corbyn to getting into number 10.
Sonia, your thoughts on, broad thoughts on addressing the nation at this crucial time. To really get them on your side, they don't have to be popular.
Yes, you do. And Theresa May certainly isn't, although I think you could look at sort of our crop of political leaders at the moment. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn isn't, his personal ratings aren't particularly high either, to be fair. But I think, there were a couple of things that really stood out for me from that statement. One was, I found it incredibly distasteful, actually, this effort to blame Parliament for everything going wrong. I think that's actually very anti-democratic. It's not the sort of language that you would expect to see, from the leader of one of the world's kind of oldest representative democracies. And she was very clearly in that statement trying to blame MPs, saying it's MPs' fault, they haven't got with the project. Well, actually, Prime Minister, I think you need to take a look at yourself. What does it say about you as a leader that you can't get MPs to back your deal? And I think it's much more reflective of Theresa May. She never wanted Parliament to have a say on this. She resisted the idea of Parliament getting meaningful votes. And now she's essentially criticising MPs for doing their jobs. The other thing I thought was incredibly rich about her statement was when she started talking about schools and hospitals and how, the public wants Parliament to be talking about schools and hospitals. Well, yes, of course they do. But one of the reasons is because her government is cutting school funding. Right. The NHS hasn't got enough money. So I know that's all important, but those words will ring a bit hollow.
Absolutely. But Giles Kenningham, I mean, on that tactic of blaming MPs, as I said to you, and address this directly, she's criticising an awful lot of Conservative MPs. It's, Conservative MPs in their dozens at the very least who have been voting against her withdrawal agreement. And isn't the constituency they really answer to their own constituency associations?
It is, but she needs to raise the stakes in this, because If the deal doesn't go through next week, then what happens? Do these MPs face a situation where there's a general election? I think if there was a general election, the Tories would be punished at the polls. It's careful what you wish for, so she does need to take them to the brink. And of course, we are living in unprecedented times where new precedents are being set every day. So in a normal situation, you wouldn't have MPs so openly criticising the Prime Minister. But that happens. Obviously, now she's taking the fight back to them.
Yeah, and one thing's clear then, Sonia Sodha, is the deal is coming back to Parliament again. And in spite of the Speaker's ruling this week that she can't if it's the same or substantially the same, so she has to find some clever wheeze to change it so as the Speaker decides it is substantially different.
That's right, and I suspect that the Speaker will find a way of allowing a vote on this deal.
Well, something might come from the EU Council.
Exactly, something might come from the EU Council, just the fact that she's seeking an extension, that may well be enough. So I don't think there's any chance that this deal doesn't come before Parliament this week. I think there's going to be a couple of things to watch for next week. One is this amendment called the Kyle Wilson Amendment, which is an amendment from a group of MPs, which is really about sort of forging a compromise with the Prime Minister, saying we as Parliament will pass your deal, but only if you put it to voters for ratification.
Well, that would be different.
It would be
in terms of allowing it through.
Indeed, it would absolutely be different. And I think this is really a last-ditch effort now for people who are in favour of a referendum on her deal to try and get it through Parliament. And I think Labour MPs are going to be facing a very important dilemma next week. Do they vote for the Kyle amendment? Do they vote to sort of put her deal through so long as it goes to the people? Or do they hold off? And if they hold off, well, they might find themselves in a situation, say, next Thursday, where Theresa May is saying, will you either vote for my deal or it's no deal?
Quick thought on that, Giles Kenningham.
I cannot see a situation where Corbyn whips his MPs to vote against the deal. And I sort of think, given where the Labour Parliamentary Party are, is he really going to crash us out on no deal? I don't think that will happen. Also, remember, the EU do settle at the 11th hour, so you still might get some dramatic development happening next week.
Then creating a whole load of problems with the Conservative Party if you get the deal through on Labour votes. But that's another issue to be discussed at another time, because I want to join my colleague John Craig. He's in Parliament's Central Lobby with Dominic Grieve, the former Attorney General and still a member of the Conservative Party, but who made a coruscating speech in the House today about how ashamed he is to be a member of that party at the moment. John.
Thank you, Dermot. Yes, I'm with Dominic Grieve, the former Conservative Attorney General, as you've heard, critic of Prime Minister's Brexit strategy, pro-Remain, pro-second referendum. Mr. Grieve, you listened to the Prime Minister's statement. What did you make of what you heard?
It's very much repeated what she'd said in the House of Commons today at Prime Minister's questions. I regret her tone because it's a very aggressive one towards the House of Commons, and whilst I can appreciate her frustration because the policy that she has adopted is not meeting with support in the House of Commons, I think that to attack and denigrate the sincerely held views of MPs who are doing their best to honour their commitment to their constituents, to do the best for their country, I think that's a mistake. And I can't see how that's going to be to her advantage in trying to find a solution to this problem.
She probably thinks that she's got public opinion on her side, that no doubt Number 10's done polling on this, and the polls perhaps show that voters are sympathetic towards her, support her, and that they're critical of MPs, playing to the gallery, you'd probably say, but she probably thinks she's got the public on her side.
Well, she may do. I mean, she made criticism about parliamentarians engaging in arcane games. But the reason why parliamentarians have had to engage in those arcane procedures is because the government has systematically tried to close down alternative routes of debate that would promote alternatives to the government's own policy. So they are the direct result of how she has decided to approach Brexit.
What do you think she needs to do now if she is going to get her deal through? We know there's a vote in the Commons on Monday. You presumably are still nothing will persuade you to vote for it. What do you think she needs to do?
Well, firstly, I would cheerfully vote for it if she agreed to put this deal to the British public. I mean, this has been my position all along. The problem is the deal bears no relationship to what was being debated in the 2016 referendum, and most members of Parliament looking at it think it has serious shortcomings. But that having been said, and in the Prime Minister's favour, it may be, in practice, the best deal we can get, but it highlights just how damaging, to my mind, Brexit is going to be. And oddly enough, my ERG colleagues, coming from another angle, think the same thing. But if the public want this and wish to vote for it in a referendum, we could put in place all the mechanisms to ensure that we could leave immediately afterwards without further ado, if that's what they want, but they should also be offered the alternative of remaining in the EU. And if she's prepared to do that, she will have my full support. But the risk is that she gets her deal rejected next week, at which point, if the EU has put a condition of extension on her getting the deal through, we will be within 72 hours of crashing out of the EU without a deal. And there will, in my view, be only three options: to crash out without a deal, to revoke Article 50 through Parliament doing it with the government, accepting that Parliament can order the Prime Minister to do it, and the Prime Minister, I suppose, could refuse, but that would be an extraordinary constitutional crisis, or holding a further referendum. There will be no other choices available, and she's closed down any other choice because the possibility of debating an alternative form of Brexit will be wholly removed by the lack of time.
You rather shocked a lot of MPs today when you were speaking in the House of Commons, and you talked about your shame being a member of the Tory party. Let's just play for our viewers what you said.
When my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, came to the dispatch box today at Prime Minister's questions, I confess I think it was the worst moment I have experienced since I came into the House of Commons. I have never felt more ashamed to be a member of the Conservative Party or to be asked to lend her support. She spent most of her time castigating the House for its misconduct. At no stage did she pause to consider whether it is in fact the way she is leading this government which might be contributing to this situation. I have great sympathy for her. I've known her for many years, and we had a personal friendship beyond and outside of this House. But I have to say, I could have wept.
I could have wept, you said there at the conclusion of that little piece we just played. Some MPs might think you're about to join your former colleague Anna Soubry and others in the independent group after that.
No, I'm a Conservative. I've been a member of the Conservative Party for well over 40 years. And I very much hope I die a member of the Conservative Party. But I do find it tragic to see my party in its current condition, and also watching the destruction of standards, whether it's ministers who don't observe collective responsibility but stay in government, ministers who don't resign when you know very well that their own personal views are wholly at variance with that of the policy being pursued by the government, and a Prime Minister who ought to be steeped in our constitutional traditions, who comes along and attacks the House of Commons in the way she did this afternoon.
There's talk of deselection in Beaconsfield. Are you going to fight that? Presumably you are.
Ultimately, I recognise that Brexit is very divisive. And so there will be members of my constituency association who will be irritated or angry with me, or even more angry with me because of the stand I've taken. Equally, there will be some who approve of what I'm doing. And we just have to see how that plays out. I recognise that ultimately a Member of Parliament must be dependent on the confidence of their constituency association.
Dominic Grieve, thank you so much for coming to talk to us straight after the Prime Minister's statement. Back to you, Dermot.
John, thank you very much indeed. And we're